Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Greetings and welcome to this study along or listening along of this principles of Buddhist thought in India, part 1, Archaic Buddhism, and chapter 3, which is the 3 marks and the perverted views. The 3 marks and the perverted views. Here we are really beginning with the fundamental teaching of the original Buddhism, or possibly what was originally emphasized by the Buddha. So have great fun. These termina, these words and concepts are greatly helpful, and they will destroy any confusion that there might have existed because of your study in the Upanishads, or the teachers who teach Hindu Upanishadic lore, and they keep cursing the Buddhist teaching. You would understand that they are all very shallow if you are able to follow this. Okay, I greatly believe in that. So let's start with chapter 3, which is the 3 marks and the perverted views. It is a basic tenet of Buddhism that all conditioned things, in other words, all the factors of our normal experience, share 3 features or marks, lakshana. They are, number 1, impermanent, number 2, ill, number 3, not self. It's a very interesting and very useful, very essential concept and understanding that we must have. So I will read it again. It is a basic tenet of Buddhism that all conditioned things, quotes, all conditioned things, quote. In other words, all the factors of our normal experience. All the factors of our normal experience. Means our living here, from birth to death. All that we experience is conditioned. Conditioned by the environment. Conditioned in the place we are. Conditioned by the time we are. Conditioned by the mental makeup we have. So that is our normal experience. What is called our normal experience. All these conditioned things share 3 features or marks. So whenever we hear the word marks, it refers to these 3 marks of our conditioned things of our normal life, factors of our normal experience. What are the 3? They are, number 1, impermanent. Means all the conditioned things are impermanent. They don't stay forever. They change, they disappear. That's what it means by impermanent. Ill. Ill means, this is a word translated for the word, Sanskrit word dukkha. Dukkha means pain. Everything is dukkha. Everything ends up in dukkha. That is the easiest understanding. Though the word dukkha is applied and interpreted in many other ways, many deeper ways. What we normally think as not dukkha or sorrow or pain, even that is treated as dukkha. So that is a later understanding that we need. But at least to begin with, we say all things end up in dukkha, kind of a thing. That is ill. 3, not self. Not self. We think that there is an entity, a self, but when we examine the conditioned things, you do not find a self. So these 3 things, impermanence, ill, and not self, these are the 3 marks of our of the conditioned things of our conditioned things. In other words, all factors of our normal experience, means all the components of our normal day-to-day experience is impermanent, ill, and not self. Even on simple reflection, this statement is bound to strike us as at least partly true, even though we may not agree fully, comprehend that this is absolutely agreeable. At least we may agree that, yeah, partially at least I agree with them, kind of a thing. Even on simple reflection, this statement is bound to strike us at least partly true. As the marks are better understood, some emotional resistance becomes inevitable. And complete conviction requires both meditation and philosophical reflection. As the marks are better understood. So if you understand clearly what this impermanence means, or what is this ill or dukkha, or not self or anatta, as these marks are better understood, some emotional resistance becomes inevitable. Because the more and more we try to understand the way these words are explained by the Buddha and the Buddhist literature, it will trigger our emotional feelings, for which we have been in love for so long. Now they all will be told that they are all impermanent, they are all ill, etc. Then it's likely to trigger disturbance in our minds. It is inevitable. And complete conviction requires both meditation and philosophical reflection. Even though these ideas, as they become more and more get explained more and more, impermanence, dukkha or ill, and not self or anatta, they would not convince you completely until one meditates on them. And philosophical reflection means, what is the basis? What is the argument? What is the inferential mechanism based on which these Buddhist arguments have been put? Saying that all factors of our normal experience are impermanent, ill, and not self. I am particularly on purpose repeating them because catching them is the most essential thing for our understanding of the Buddhist thought. In its simple, untechnical meaning, impermanence simply means that everything changes all the time. This thesis, which is held to be indisputable, is further developed by, number one, an analysis of the process of change. Number two, the determination of the duration of an event. And number three, the reviewing of the practical consequences which should be drawn from the fact of impermanence. So here he will describe greatly in understanding these impermanence, dukkha or ill, and anatta or not self. Impermanence is ashashchata, anicca. In Pali literature, you would say anicca, or Sanskrit is anitya. Anitya. Nitya means permanent. Anitya means not permanent. And dukkha is for ill, and not self means anatta, or another Sanskrit word is nairatmya. Nairatmya, or not self, anatta, or anatma, etc. Anatma is also a little different than nairatmya. Nairatmya is the more accurate one. Here, in its simple, untechnical meaning, impermanence simply means that everything changes all the time. Everything changes all the time. You cannot prevent change. This thesis, which is held to be indisputable, even science agrees with that, even the scientists agree, indisputable, is further developed by three fundamental lines of thinking. There is an analysis of the process of change. How does change occur? How does change occur? Change does not happen abruptly. It's happening continuously. That's what is the meaning. The determination of the duration of an event. The determination of the duration of an event. How long is that? When you determine that. And 3, the reviewing of the practical consequences which should be drawn from the fact of impermanence. So obviously you recognize something is impermanent. But how do I apply this for practical situations, for my living here? So we need to review this impermanence, a review of practical consequences which should be drawn from the fact of impermanence. So now 3 points are told. Now he's going to elaborate on them. Add 1. We are urged to see things as they come, become, go, and to distinguish the 3 phases of rise, fall, and duration. Add 1. We are urged to see things as they come, become, go, and to distinguish the 3 phases of rise, fall, and duration. So this is about the process of change. Add 2, we are taught that things and persons last very much shorter than we usually suppose. Because here we are interested about the determination of the duration of the event. What he is saying is, add 2, we are taught that things and persons last very much shorter than we usually suppose. An almost Heraclitean statement reminds us that there is not a moment, not an inkling, not a second when a river does not flow. When a river does not flow. There is not a moment. On closer investigation, a factual event, dharma. Factual event, dharma. The event is the word for dharma. Turns out to last for just one moment. As Thomas Stegnerbatsky put it, instantaneous being is the fundamental doctrine by which all the Buddhist system is established at one stroke. Read this one. On closer investigation, a factual event, dharma, turns out to last for just one moment. A thought comes and goes, like that. A thought comes, does not stay forever and goes away. And the analysis, after further analysis, it is said that stays for a moment. That's what it means. The same thing, okay? Same thing about everything that's called dharma. So when we see the list of dharmas that will be talked about, you will know what it means. On closer investigation, a factual event, dharma, turns out to last for just one moment. And as Thomas Stegnerbatsky put it, quotes, instantaneous being is the fundamental doctrine by which all the Buddhist system is established at one stroke. I think he talks about the book of Stegnerbatsky, Buddhist Logic. We are not going into that, but those of you who are interested, and Edward Conze mentioned that it is well done book, Buddhist Logic. Means logically presenting the Buddhist system. That's what it means. Justifying that logically. Add 3. Everything that is transient should, for that very reason, be rejected. Means the number 3, he already said to us, what are the practical consequences? What are the practical consequences? Reviewing the practical consequences which should be drawn from the fact of impermanence. So if everything is impermanent the way you are describing, so what is it for me? What am I supposed to do? So that he is answering here. Add 3. Everything that is transient should, for that very reason, be rejected. Don't hang on to think this is a reality, this is a fact, because that is transient. By the time you think, it's gone. So, even in the Upanishadic thinking, we say, what appears and goes is not reality. So, in that basis, we discard them. For example, even in the Hindu Upanishadic system, when the idea of a Brahman or the source consciousness is to be established, and which to say that I, the consciousness, is the same as the source, there what do? We say that this waking state comes and goes. This dream state comes and goes. This deep sleep state comes and goes. Because they are impermanent. Discard them and know who you are, which is permanent, which is support for all these 3 states. So in terms of either a Buddhistic thinking or in terms of Upanishadic thinking, definitely the idea is that the impermanent should be rejected. It is not to be grasped. It is not to be mistaken for yourself, in the Upanishadic terminology. Add 3. Everything that is transient should, for that very reason, be rejected. The impermanent is automatically ill, means dukkha, and should be dreaded. The impermanent is automatically ill and should be dreaded. Howsoever long may be the life in the heaven, it is going to end. And ultimately sorrow will come. So he says, even craving for the life in the heaven is not to be cherished. It is to be dreaded, because at the end it only gives you sorrow, that you will be pushed down, you will come back to this world and suffer, and more intensely. Because of your previous experience of comfort, now you have much more discomfort. So that needs to be dreaded. For quote, what is impermanent, that is not worth delighting in, not worth being impressed by, not worth clinging to. These are all from the Buddhist sutras, okay, these words. For what is impermanent, that is not worth delighting in, not worth being impressed by, not worth clinging to. So the Sanskrit equivalent of that is Yad Anityam Tam Nalam Abhinanditum Nalam Abhivaditum Nalam Ajjositum. This is from the Majjhima Nikaya, second discourse, and he is giving page numbers. So this is how he is referring to that. So the sentence that is translated here, which is, what is impermanent, that is not worth delighting in, not worth being impressed by, not worth clinging to. The Sanskrit equivalent, as it says, this is a Buddhist Sanskrit, they say, because there are some changes in the structure and the words and grammar slightly. Yad anichyam tam nalam abhinanditum is not sufficient to delight in. Tam na alam abhinanditum. Nandana means to delight. Nalam abhivaditum is not praiseworthy. It's not to be spoken about. There's nothing great about talking about it. Na abhivaditum. Nalam ajjoshitum. Ajjoshitum. This is from the Majjhima Nikaya. I just wanted to refer to, because these are from the Tripitaka, Sutta Pitaka. That's what it means. Of course, more details are not given, who spoke to what, when Buddha said. We can study that in the Majjhima Nikaya, or the middle length discourses as it is called. The above 3 points constitute the minimum definition of impermanence. The minimum definition of impermanence, which led to further developments in Hinayana and Mahayana alike. So, from the original Buddhism to Hinayana, which is mostly the Abhidharma literature, etc. Okay. The above 3 points constitute the minimum definition of impermanence, which led to further developments in Hinayana and Mahayana alike. The second mark is dukkha. Ill, what is translated in English as ill, is the Sanskrit word is dukkha, which may be translated as ill. The full import of ill is hidden from all but the highest saint. The full import of ill is hidden from all but the highest saint and is understood only imperfectly on the lower levels of insight. Because there are many things we don't see as pain. We don't see them as ill or dukkha. But a man of higher understanding says, even this is dukkha. When somebody says, this birth itself is a dukkha, may not be felt that way by common folks like us, who think there is joy here. But a man of great spiritual understanding says, this birth itself is evil. That's what he means here. The full import of ill is hidden from all but the highest saint and is understood only imperfectly on the lower levels of insight. Like in the Sanskrit Sankaracharya sloka, we say, Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare sayanam. So it's a similar thing. So what a worthless thing it is, again and again being born and be in the mother's womb, the dark, undeveloped state of being, and then you come out and grow and die to come back to the womb again. This cycle of birth, staying, living and dying and completing, that itself is sorrow. That's how even we see in the Hindu literature. And Buddhists are no different from that. We may be content here to distinguish the 3 stages of the comprehension of ill. We may be content here to distinguish 3 stages of the comprehension of ill, so that we can see what are the 3 different levels we can see in that. For the beginner, it can mean that all his experience is also ill. For the beginner, it can mean that all his experience is also ill. That is, that it is in some way or other connected with suffering and unpleasant feelings. Our every endeavor is somehow connected to suffering and unpleasant feelings. In its first part, the first holy truth, okay, we'll come to that. It enumerates evils which are either obvious ills like old age, sickness, death, etc., or which, like birth, etc., are, on brief reflection, seem to be ills. So the 4 principles, okay, the noble truths, as it is called in English, noble truth, Arya Dharma, Buddha's both of Buddha. We'll see. I don't want to preempt what is to come, but everything is dukkha. That is the holy truth number 1, Arya Dharma. That's what he is referring to. While elaborating that, in its first part, the first holy truth enumerates evils which are either obvious ills, like the old age, sickness, death, etc., or which, like birth, etc., are on brief reflection seem to be ills. Birth may not seem to be an ill, but on a little reflection, as I said earlier, that birth only leads to all the suffering. So birth itself is a suffering. That's how it is. So a brief reflection, one may agree with it. The last sentence, however, is in an altogether different category. To say that all grasping at any of the 5 skandhas is or involves ills, does not carry immediate conviction. So here there is a technical term skandha. We will see that as we speak now. So the third part of this dukkha presentation says, grasping at any skandha is dukkha. Means grasping at any experiences. For example, I have a very fine experience of eating a mango, and if I try to hold it by either eating more or keeping it, it's not going to stay. If you eat more than 2, 3, 4, you will get sick. So grasping at that mango, thinking that I'm going to be delighted, is not going to work to that extent. So he says, to say that all grasping at any of the 5 skandhas is or involves ill, does not carry immediate conviction. So what is a skandha? Skandha is a categorization. For example, I see. Seeing is one skandha. Rupa skandha, let us say. The material properties. So all my experiences which are related to the material category, material or the form and name, as we say, categorize them into one group, because you don't need to dissect each one of them. These are of one category. Then we have feelings, pleasantness, unpleasantness. So ultimately every sense organ, sense object that is going to give us experience, what is it that is going to be tangible to me in my experience? Either pleasantness or unpleasantness. So these are the feelings. So all the such feelings, I have today, tomorrow, day after, on this thing, on that thing, ultimately. So this is the feeling skandha. Feeling skandha, heap of feelings, heap of feeling. Means there are multiple times it happens. So that is why heap of feeling. Similarly, the other things are there. Vijnana, ultimately it goes to. And then there is the impressions that we have. There are the ideas that we have. So these are the 5 skandhas which will be detailed into the chapter of the dharmas. We will see them also. But basically, all the 5 categories of human experience that we want to see, analyze, they themselves are skandhas. They are of sorrow and ill, causing ill. To say that all grasping at any of the 5 skandhas, grasping which is the ill, not skandhas themselves. You try to grasp them. You identify them. Grasping should be understood very simply. That identifying with them. I identify myself with it. I have a stake in it. I am compelled. I repeat everything. I work towards keeping them. You know, in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, very easily said, Ragadvesha. Very Ragadvesha. Certain things we like, so we want to keep them. Certain things we hate, we want to throw them away, separate them. So Ragadvesha, we are always caught up in this Ragadvesha, or likes and dislikes, preferences, or likes and dislikes. That is what is here being said in a different way. Saying now if you categorize these experiences into 5 groups, 5 categories, trying to grasp any of them is going to give you sorrow. That is what it is meaning. To say that all grasping at any of the 5 skandhas is, or at least it involves, ill, does not carry immediate conviction. One may not readily agree it. I only carry good things, you may say. So that is why it won't carry immediate conviction in us when we simply hear this Buddha's teaching. What is in question is the universality of ill. Universality of ill means everywhere the ill or dukkha is involved. That is what is in question is the universality of ill. This cannot be established without some clarification of the concept of grasping skandhas, as I was saying. So grasping skandhas is what is the problem. So some elaboration would be needed for that. Or rather, skandhas insofar as they are grasped at. Insofar as they are grasped at. If you don't grasp it, nothing. Okay? The skandhas, insofar as they are grasped at, as well as a complicated philosophical inquiry into why the sum total of that which has been appropriated should ipso facto be totally ill. So what he's saying is a complicated philosophical inquiry into why the sum total of that which has been appropriated should ipso facto, means as a matter of fact, be totally ill, dukkha. In addition, some emotional resistance must be expected at this stage. So when we analyze this, obviously we may not agree with them. It will trigger some emotional feelings, but we will continue reading that. For now, we'll take a break. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.